Welcome to From Beyond with your host, Glenn Boddice. Join me as we explore spirituality, self-help, and channeling spirits. Hello to From Beyond with your host, Glenn Boddice, spiritual medium. Thank you for joining into this week's show as we're going to dive deeply into the subject of paranormal activity. Also in this week's episode, we have the channeling from the world of spirit, which sees me becoming a vessel for spirit to bring their wisdoms and communications forward. And then we have a sneaky peek into this week's energy forecast reading. So let's dive deep. As I say, we're discussing paranormal activity. First of all, how do you know that you have paranormal activity in your home, in your workplace, in a venue, wherever you happen to be? Well, there's various signs for you to look out for. But before we go into that, I would like to encourage you all not just to assume that you have spirit or you have energy or that you have a paranormal occurrence in any of these venues that I've been speaking of. I would employ everybody to check the obvious signs. So there's been accounts from various people over the years, and they've complained about banging noises and things of that nature, thinking it's paranormal activity. And when all it is an airlock in their heating system that they didn't realize was there. But potentially because they've watched either a horror film or something of a paranormal nature, they instantly assume that that's what it could be. It's not necessarily the case. So always check the obvious first. Electrical issues as well. You may have old wiring in your property where the wiring comes in and out, phases in and out and drops. And also old wiring looms can create a magnetic force, if you will, where there's lots of wiring all raveled around one another, and can make you feel unwell and slightly unbalanced. So it's worth checking that out. The obvious things are making sure that there's no windows open or broken in the property, so drafts can't come in and out. No doors are open, so drafts again can't come in and out. Just doing baseline checks basically around the home, making sure you haven't got squeaky floorboards or squeaky doors, and things of that nature, really. You really want to go to town with this, so don't naturally assume, oh, we have a ghost, we have a spirit. Go down the avenue of debunking it first. And when you've done that, and yet you still can't explain what is occurring, then at that point, I still wouldn't say that it's paranormal activity. I would maybe, get some other advice. I would personally ask a friend or relative to come in and have a look, and what do you feel, what do you sense, what are you hearing, and all of that, and get a second opinion. And at that point, if that element of doubt is still there, then it's worth exploring even further. But some of the signs, in my experience, that you have paranormal activity in any of these locations, once you've done all of those checks, I would say unexplained noises. Sometimes you can hear disembodied voices. You may even get to hear your name being called when there's nobody else in the home or property, and you can hear it very strongly, very clearly. Also unexplained noises, one of the common ones are people walking about when there's only one person in that property and there's no explanation, and you can hear footsteps loud and clear. Maybe if you're downstairs in the property and you can hear these footsteps coming from the floor above. And this is something that I've experienced many times in my own home. And that's very interesting. So that's one thing to look out for. Other thing, movements as well, maybe dragging noises or tapping or a common thing that I've noticed that spirit do, when you clank that's probably the wrong term, your fingernails or tap your fingernails on, say, a door, and it makes this sort of sound, that sort of sound. Potentially, that could be paranormal activity. You want to debunk that first, as I say. You want to make sure that you don't have a rodent issue, because they can come in under the floorboards. They can come into the walls, the inside of the walls, and obviously they can go in the loft there. So that may be an issue there that you may need to check out before, again, assuming that you have a spirit. Another thing that potentially could be paranormal activity are visual phenomena. Now, again, I've experienced this on a personal level many times. And one of the strangest things that I've witnessed is particularly when you're walking in a room. Okay, so I'll give you my example. Is I walked downstairs, came into my music room, bearing in mind, nobody smokes in this property. No windows were open at the time. There were no leaks. Nobody was cooking or anything of that nature. And I debunked all of it first before, I committed to this, what I'm about to reveal to you. But basically, anyway, I came into the music room and the room was full of fog. Honestly, and it wasn't foggy outside either. There was no fumes coming in from cars or vans or anything like that. No windows were open. And there was this thick fog. And to me, instantly, I knew it was paranormal visitations, because the moment that I walked into that room, I got the chills. I got the energetic shivers, that energetic exchange that anybody that is sensitive will recognize, and you'll just know straight away. Your hackles will go up. Your hair will stand up on end. My neck hair did, not my head hair, obviously. You've seen how I look. But anyway, this thick fog, it was so crazy. I couldn't see from one end of the room to the other end of the room. And I wasn't experiencing any issues with my eyes either. So I was debunking all of that before. But I just knew straight away it was paranormal activity. You could feel it in the atmosphere. It was dense. It was thick fog in my music room. There was no issues with the electrics or anything like that. And I just stood there and I watched it. And I watched it start to clear. And it was crazy, actually. It went from being really dense, not being able to see to the other side of the room, and it's not a big room, to clearing and being able to see very clear to the other side of the room in a matter, I want to say, probably around a minute, probably just under a minute, that I witnessed that. So to me, that is a good indication that you have paranormal activity. Again, I wasn't concerned. I wasn't worried because, as I've said before, I have a couple of portals, well, 3, if I'm honest, in this property. And so I did sense that it was spiritual traffic just coming in to have a look round and have a nosy. They didn't mean any harm. If they did, then I would have, with the help of Archangel Michael, the Band of Mercy, helped them on their way. But I didn't need to do that. It just cleared very, very quickly. So that is one thing to look out for. As I say, electrics can be tampered with. But again, don't naturally assume that, first of all, it is paranormal activity. Go down the logical explanation first. But I've had various issues with the electrics here, where batteries and things as well have drained very, very quickly on electronic devices. Also, I've had where I've put batteries in clock, like a clock that I have on the wall, and it wasn't in there long, and all of a sudden that battery was drained. And on the very same day, there was an issue with my van, and the stereo just went on the actual same day. So to me, that got me very curious about what was going on. I later found that it was a message from Spirit telling me about energy, that there'd been an energy change, a shift in the vibration with the frequencies, and a time shift, in fact. And that's why it had knocked it out of both of them. The clock being significant, I looked at the time in which it stopped at, and I made a mental note and then did some research with the angel numbers, and that kind of tallied up with the message that was left by doing that. So I changed that battery in the clock, and since then everything's been working all right. But I found it very strange how it wasn't that long since I changed the battery previously, and it was a brand new battery, one of the high-end batteries that last absolutely ages. So that got me curious, and then I explored with my guides there. Another thing that I probably mentioned on a previous show is where I had an issue with the fire alarms, and this was interesting because we was getting them going off. Well, one particular alarm at the top of the stairs was going off every 7 minutes, and we would reset it, and then in the end it wasn't wired to the electrics or anything like that. It had a battery, and so we thought, okay, is it the battery? Does the battery need changing? So we changed the battery, and again it was still going off. So I thought, right, well, it's not connected to the mains. What is going off here? So anyway, eventually I took the battery out, and and that seemed to cure it. It wasn't a faulty device, if anybody's asking. But before I took the battery out, after keep going up and down stairs, and manually pressing this fire alarm off, I got a little bit fed up of it. And so anyway, the final time I went up there, I felt a spiritual tingle, shall we say, at the top of the stairs. This intense feeling of spirit, like it was kind of overshadowing me. And then I heard this spirit voice, this communication, not with my physical ears, with my, psychic ability there, spiritual ability. And I heard this gentleman's voice, and so I had a conversation with him. And anyway, it turned out that this gentleman in spirit had been doing this in order to gain my attention. And the reason for this is that there's a portal at the top of the stairs, and he'd actually come into that portal, mistaken it for a way out, because he saw the light and he thought he was making his way back home to heaven, spirit world, whatever terminology you wish to use. And instead he ended up at the top of my stairs, which must have been a shocking disappointment for him. And anyway, lost his way, because I believe sometimes these portals, vortexes, they open up and then there's a brief moment in time and then they close down. I don't know why they do that. Maybe it's the protection mechanism I have on the ones in my property, and he just kind of snuck in, so to speak. But anyway, I always know that it's a safe space in my environment, and I know that I'm continually protected and guided. So what I proceeded to do is have this conversation with this gentleman. He admitted to setting the alarm off, to raise the alarm, to get my attention, so that I could pick up on his presence and then help him along on his way to send him back over, and which I did very successfully. And it was a beautiful experience, very vivid, if I recall it. But after that, I thought, well, okay, let's see what happens now. And the alarms didn't stop going off, but just to be on the safe side, I also, after about an hour or so, I took the battery out as well. But that was a beautiful experience. Some nice evidence there that this spirit gentleman needed some help. Water as well in a property is very interesting. because water is a conductor for spirit energy. They can manipulate energy from water in order to manifest, in order to come forward. So, if you have a pool of water or a leaky tap or something like that, that can attract spirit and it can attract paranormal activity. You may also have where you have taps turning themselves on as well at random times as well. And, you may want to go down the logical explanation first and, get somebody in, a plumber in, just to be on the safe side, or somebody that has that knowledge, before you start, again, considering that it's paranormal activity. But if you have done that and it is persisting, then I would make a mental note of the times in which it is occurring and also what is happening in the building at that particular time. Particularly if you've got family, loved ones around, or when a family member comes to visit and then these taps come on every time that family member comes to visit. Could it be the vibration, the energy that friend, family, loved one is coming into your property with? I'm talking about people in this, in the physical world now, not in spirit. And when they come to visit you in your home, and then these taps may go on, make a mental note of that. Who's there, what the time is, what were you talking about when that occurred, what music were you playing, what were you watching on the TV, have you been doing any decorating? This is an important thing to mention, actually. Whenever a house is being renovated or decorated, not always, but most of the time, what I've observed is that it stirs up the vibrations, the frequencies within that property. It mixes it up. You've heard of, is it Feng Shui, that a method where arranging furniture can change the energy in the environment, make it a more positive one, or more of an energy that's more in alignment with yourself. Then potentially, this is what's happening as well. So it can make a shift in the vibration. And, unknowing to you, you may be sharing your property with a spirit family that is living there alongside of you without you even realizing. In their dimension, it's whatever year they passed or whatever year they chose not to move on. And maybe they did this consciously or unconsciously, and they're continuing to live in that placeholder of your property. And potentially when you change up or renovate your property, it has ricocheting effects in their experience, on their timeline, on their reality. And so this may upset them. It may make them feel agitated, bewildered by what is going on. And with that being the case, they may feel an inclination to show their frustration by making things happen in your home. And it could be banging noises. It could be things going missing. It could be rather bizarre dreams and being, disturbed at various times when you're trying to get to sleep. It could be anything, really. They're very capable of manipulating thoughts, putting thoughts in your mind. It can be all sorts, but potentially the trigger for that could actually be renovating or, decorating the property. It can shift that energy and that vibration. And a lot of the time, most of us don't realize that we have spirit living alongside of us at the exact same location, but on a different frequency, a different timeline. So, when you change the vibration, it changes theirs slightly. So what I would suggest, if this is the case and you're wanting to plan to renovate and change things up, I would, I know it sounds crazy and silly to some people, but I would have a conversation in your property or workplace and say, okay, whoever is here in spirit, whoever resides here or comes to visit this location, I'm just sounding you off that we're going to be doing some renovating. We're going to be doing some painting and some decorating, or we're going to move that door to that door. Whatever you're planning on doing, have the conversation just out loud, and you're giving them that heads up, so to speak. A very polite thing to do. And then see how it goes from there. But what you do find is that it rakes a lot of these old energy up. So if you didn't have any paranormal activity, then all of a sudden you had a renovation, or you did some painting or housework, and then all of a sudden these weird things started to happen. It's because, like I say, you're changing the vibration, the frequency layout of that environment, and it can upset the equilibrium of some spirits or visitors by doing that. So yeah, it's a very interesting fine line between, is it paranormal activity? Is it just, is it a logical explanation? But yeah, interesting that. Anyway, moving on with this topic, if you do happen to notice paranormal activity and you notice some of these things I've been describing to you, then always stand strong with yourself, get to know yourself, know what you will accept, what you won't accept, and also have a clear intention. This is if it's your home, this is my space. I appreciate that you're, visiting here, but these are my house rules. And, set those clear intentions and say them out loud. I would also come from a perspective of love whilst you're doing it. The minute that you start to come in from the vibration of fear and aggression and anger, you're lowering the vibrations of that environment, and you're going to get more activity. And it's going to be thick and rife and not very comfortable to be in those spaces. So you want to take charge of the situation by vibrating the vibration of love. And when you vibrate the vibration of love, anything that is not in alignment with that cannot abide to be in the presence of it. So it will respectfully leave, because it will not be able to tolerate that vibration of love. So make sure that you're keeping yourself positive and you're going in with that positive, affirming attitude. I've also got to say that being respectful is paramount when you're dealing with paranormal activity or going to locations where there is known paranormal activity. And you do this by introducing yourself, by listening, by being courteous. Introduce yourself, let them know who you are, why you're there, and just be respectful. Listen to them. I've also got to say, this is something that's not mentioned enough of, but from my experience, it does happen quite a lot on the odd occasion. Trust your gut instinct. Yeah, and it doesn't matter whether you're a sensitive, whether you're spiritual, whether you're, a medium or anything like that. I would always encourage you to trust your gut instinct. And I'll give you the reason for why. Because some energies that you interact with in some locations, they may present themselves via communicating with you through either electronic devices, spiritual gadgets and gizmos, board work, or even doing divination work, anything like that, or just direct mediumship. They may introduce themselves as, I would say, childlike energies, and they'll come across all sweet and innocent and loving and woe is me and I've had this happen and blah, blah, blah. And they do this to try and get you on side, to get your moral support and to get that empathy from you, to lower your vibration straight away, to get in alignment with theirs as they're sharing their woes and their story. And of course, instantly you think, oh, it's a child, poor thing, bless this child. You instantly feel sorry for them, and there's a level of trust that you have with that connection almost straight away when you hear a child or have a communication with a spirit child, isn't there? But some energies use this and they cloak themselves in this vibration of a child in order to manipulate your vibration, to change your mindset. They're very deceitful when they're like this. And although you're hearing the information, you're getting the communication, sometimes it's visual, with your third eye. Other times, it may be clear audience, hearing with the internal mind there, the internal spiritual ears. And it sounds also, woe is me, innocent because a child is saying it. And you notice yourself, like I say, empathizing with them. Whilst you're hearing and observing all of this, all of a sudden, you just get this feeling off in your gut instincts. It's something that's not tallying up, something that's not adding up right. And even though it sounds right, what's being presented to you seems and is being shown right, in your gut instinct, there's just this niggling feeling, there's something wrong with this connection. At that point, what I do, obviously being a medium, I ask my guides and I'll say, right, why am I feeling this? Why am I feeling this? And my guides will come in and they'll say, Glenn, this individual who you are communicating with, don't trust them. It's somebody manipulating. And they'll tell me who it is, who's actually shape-shifting to appear as a child. And then I'll connect in with their energy and I'll suss them out and I'll call them out on it. And with my experience, when you call them out, it's like, oh, I've been rumbled. And then you don't come in with negativity. You come in with love and you show that love at all times, and they can't tolerate that when you call them out on it. Like I say, they can't live in that vibration or exist or visit where there's lots of high vibrational energies. So what they'll do is they'll go in at a low vibrational state. They'll make out that they're a child, and then they'll get you on side to lower your vibration. And you may be asking, well, why are they doing that? And I would say it's to manipulate you to lower your vibration so that they can harvest that energy that you're creating, so that they can use that to energize themselves in order for them to exist in this dimension. That is my experience. I know it's quite an unusual thing to be talking about, but yeah, trust your gut instincts. I also would like to encourage you to formulate a plan with your team or your spirit guides if you're going to a paranormal location or whatever the circumstances are. Don't just rock up there, with bravado and thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to be great. It's going to be great. We'll sort it out. You've got to have a bit of a plan and you've got to set some intentions, put your protection up around you, have a conversation with your higher self, your spirit team there, and make sure that you have all of those things in place before you even set one foot onto that premises or in that location. As I say, formulate a plan with your team as well. So if you're in a paranormal investigation team, again, ahead of going to the event, work out what it is you're going to be doing there and what your intentions are. And you've all got to be sort of singing from the same hymn sheet, so to speak. Because if there's one of you in that team that happens to have had a bad day and they're feeling a little bit run down or fed up for whatever reason, life can put us through many things that put us in that vibration, then potentially this can be like a fast food stall for any spiritual activity that's there, particularly these negative spirits. They'll target that individual and they'll make them feel worse. They'll zap their energy. They'll capitalize on their negativity in that person's thinking, in their demeanor, in order to bring them down, in order to harvest them for that energy so they can exist in this dimension. So yeah, you've got to have a plan. Definitely. You've all got to be on the same page with that. Another thing to note with paranormal activity, and this is spirit will use all of your senses in order to convey their story to you. So they will use, obviously, your thoughts. They'll put a thought in your head. They may put a word in your head. Even songs, they'll use songs to communicate their story to you. They may even utilize your own personal experiences in your memory bank, and they'll locate those and they'll replay those at the forefront of your mind. And you'll find it bizarre when this happens. It's like, why am I thinking this? This happened when I was 8. I haven't thought of that for many, many years. And all of a sudden it pops up in your mind. I would say potentially spirit are using that experience because there's a similarity to their predicament and what you experienced around that time there. So do watch out for that. They will also use your sense of hearing, obviously, your emotions as well, feeling. Some people, when they go to paranormal locations, they can have mood swings. Naturally, they're very chipper, they're very happy, and all of a sudden, they're just down in the dumps and they feel really tired. They keep yawning and they're a little bit negative with sarcasm in their comments. Potentially, this could be that spirit interacting there as well. They'll use your sense of smell as well. I mean, the most common one, the smell of sulfur, really, really bad, sort of eggy smell. Obviously, I'm going to say debunk it first before you say it's a demon or whatever. Somebody may have had a curry 2 hours before going on that event, and they're just keeping it under the hat. They're keeping it stum, and the rest. They keep dropping bombs every other few minutes. So yeah, debunk it first, but yeah, also tastes as well. Spirit will use that in order to convey the story. But what I've noticed does happen in paranormal locations is all of a sudden, maybe yourself or a team member or somebody that is with you may start to feel some aches and pains on their physical body. And yet there was right as rain before they entered that location. Some people jump to conclusions and assume, I've been hit. Something's hit me on the leg, or my back is hurting. I feel like I've been punched in the stomach. Yes, you may be experiencing that, but more than often than not, what I've experienced when that has happened to myself is I question it further, first of all, with my guides and ask, well, why has that happened? And then I establish a link with that spirit individual that has caused that on me, and to see what's happening. And usually it is them conveying their story to you. So they may have had a bad back. They may have had an accident where they hurt their arm or something like that. They're not grabbing your arm to hurt you. They're trying to tell their story in the path of least resistance. So they're just going to put that feeling on the physical body. And it won't last for long. It's usually there until you worked out what it is you're picking up. And so they will do that. So never sort of instantly think, I'm being attacked. I've been in places where I've felt like I've had my neck squeezed, around the front there, like I'm being strangled. And it's nothing personal against me. It's the spirit there that's been trying to convey that that's the way that they passed. They were either strangled or they had some sort of issue with the throat. And as soon as I question it, I get the information, like I say, from my guides and build that rapport up with that spirit. And then I ask them, thank you, but can you now take that off for me, please? And I ask them to do that. Usually they will take it off. But as a safety measure, what I do is I knock onto whatever area of the physical body by forming a fist, and I say these words, clean, clear, cancel, delete, and I knock on it as I'm speaking those words. And that also clears the vibration of that experience that I've been describing there. So yeah, when they touch you, maybe you initially feel it's harm. It's not necessarily the case. They're trying to tell their story and deliver that to you. They're not necessarily always trying to cause you harm. But it is worth not assuming that investigating and asking your guide, if you're aware of your guide, or trusting your gut intuition. If it feels off, if it feels a little bit wrong, usually it is. So if it becomes persistent, then I would certainly recommend that you get yourself out of that location, get yourself outside, away from where you experienced that phenomena, if it does feel off. If it doesn't, then explore it further and get the answers, get some answers. Why are you making my leg feel this way? And you may get another response as well. And this is how it works. This is how they convey their story. What I have experienced in various different locations, different times, doing some house cleansings, going on investigations and things of that nature, is I've come across what are described as imps. And these are like lower level elementals. They're very mischievous. They like to cause mayhem, trouble, and instill a vibration of fear in that environment by causing this mayhem. One particular example, they were running up and down the stairs. They were getting knives out of the drawer in a kitchen. They were moving things. They were turning taps on and off. They were even vibrating a bed that belonged at this location while the occupants were in it. And you can imagine what level of fear and fright and, just feeling absolutely icky about all the entire thing that would have done. So I've experienced that, and successfully we removed those energies, those elementals on to where they originated from, and we cleansed that property of all of that ill will that was there. Also, unsettling feelings in locations. I've been to various properties where there's just been like this black cloud hovering over it, not physically, but, energetically. And it seems no matter how hard the occupants of that location try, they can't seem to shift this mood swing that they're experiencing. They're continually tired. They feel exhausted. They have dark thoughts that come into their mind when they're a very happy-go-lucky, chipper type of person. And yet they're experiencing that. It's so I've had some places like that. Also, seeing manifestations in locations. That's obviously paranormal activity. I've seen lots, as I've said on previous episodes, in my property. With having the 3 portals there, it is a bit of a through traffic. And I kind of accept that, plus the work that I do working with clients and channeling as well. But we have, I would say, a respect for one another. And if it was becoming overwhelming or, too consuming, then I would state that, and we would have to, shall we say, draw up a new contract with having those things in the home there, so to speak. And then a lot of people are visited whilst they're sleeping as well. Obviously, this is the easiest way that spirit can communicate with you when your guard is down, when you're relaxed, and when you're not jittery or jumpy or putting those energy blocks up in front of yourself. Then they will take this opportunity. 9 times out of 10, it will be a loved one. And this is where you'll have a dream about that loved one, maybe in spirit. Your loved one is in spirit. You have a dream about you interacting with them. That is actually them doing that, I feel, in my experience. They're conveying a message to you. So maybe if you can, keep a dream journal and write some key facts and moments within that dream, because dreams, as you know, are very symbolic, and they'll contain a message that they wish to convey to you. So it's up to you to write that down and then work out the symbolism within it. And you'll be amazed once you do that. It's fascinating how that they can work with you. But I've known people that have been either touched whilst they're asleep. They've seen apparitions at the end of the bed, and they've been scared witless, shall we say. And I would also say that with this being the case, you've got to take your energy back, your power back. If you're not liking it, if it's something that you don't want to experience, then you have to take ownership of that and say it out loud and say, I don't appreciate that whilst I'm sleeping. Please don't do it again. Be respectful, but authoritative at the same time. You've got to lay it on the line with them. There's also people that have had objects move in their property. I've been to places where that's happened, where keys go missing, where chairs are moved, where items just go vanish. They completely vanish, and then several days later they show up in a random place where nobody would have even thought of putting that item. Again, potentially spirit energy, a loved one playing with you, wanting your attention, not necessarily wanting to scare or frighten you, but what was the item, first of all, that they made vanish and appear again? Maybe there's a symbolic meaning why they chose that item, and where did they take it from, and where did they leave it? That may be a message in itself. So not everything, I would say, is of a negative ilk. But then again, always explore it. Don't always assume that everything is sunshine and daisies either. Connect in, use the gut instincts to help you assess what is really happening in your environment, if you are experiencing any of the things that I've spoken about today. So I hope that's given you a little bit more wisdom and understanding about paranormal activity. And I hope it's encouraged you, rather than just to say it's a ghost, it's a spirit, that it's encouraged you to do the logical tests and checks ahead of making that assumption. Always, I would say, leave that till the last minute. When it can't be explained by anything, then pursue the paranormal activity route. How is everybody doing? I hope you've had a beautiful week so far, or previous week. I've just recently come back from a place called Beamish, and that's up near Durham. And this is one of the living museums where they've repurposed buildings from all over the country and placed them there. And it's from the early 1900s. I think you've got some Victorian implements there, you've got all the actors there, and it was just incredible. I thought I'd bring that up because the amount of energy, as you can imagine, from all of those articles, the buildings, the way that they've laid things out from the original timeline of the Victorian period are there. And it can be quite intensive, particularly as a sensitive, walking through that environment. I wasn't working, so I wasn't fully switched on to it. So I was ignoring a lot of it, but some you just couldn't ignore. It was so rife there. So I thought I'd bring that up. Anyway, we're going to move into the next segment of the show, which is this week's channeling from the world of spirit. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the communication.
We'd like to talk to you about verbal and non-verbal communication. This is something that's often overlooked by you in your society. There's a lot of energy going round. As you know, those of you that are paying attention will feel it and also hear it. But in our conversation today, let's talk about the verbal communication. Words, as you know, contain an energy, a frequency. And depending upon that choice of the, shall we say, communicator, the word will be emitting a tone at vibrational frequency. So, with the words being exchanged and the information being exchanged, that will cause the intellect in the mind to configure that information, as you know, into a coherent sentence. Yet the energy speaks another language, and this language is often felt through the heart and the heart chakra. It's a feeling tone, and that feeling tone will emit another form of communication. And so what we're alluding to with this conversation today is that when you are speaking with people and interacting with people, there will be these two forms of communication that will be occurring simultaneously. And it is up to you as the listener, as the observer, to unpick the truth vibrations in both of those communications. Now, what you will be finding in these current circumstances, these current timelines, is that the words that you are hearing will not be matching the feelings that you are feeling. And that is simply because there is a misalignment in communication. But those of you that are paying attention are observing both elements of this level of communication will read between the lines and feel and sense the true essence of that communication. The reason why we speak to you in this manner today is to make you more aware of the truth of what's really happening, of what's really going on. As there's a lot of individuals at this moment in time that are telling you that they're doing really well in their life and they're very happy, they're content, and everything's going swimmingly for them. Yet their vibrational energy frequency is telling a different story. And what we want you to do is to go into that feeling tone. As you, as a light worker, as a vessel of love and light in this dimension, will have the ability, by listening and feeling that communication, in transmuting that energy. So we're talking about the feeling tone communication that they're offering you. Maybe out of alignment with the words that they are speaking. Well, with you transmuting this energy, just by you listening and paying attention and understanding the information that's being exchanged to you, in essence, you are turning that vibration around into a positive, loving and healing vibration, so that they can feel more uplifted in themselves, more in alignment, and so that their communications match up, if you understand our meaning. So it's very important that you're aware of these two forms of communication. There are other forms of communications, as you know, such as sign language for those that have the inability to communicate through verbal. And also there's the sign of body language and gestures as well. That's similar to sign language, but in another way. Now, as you know, that contains a level of communication and can be misinterpreted depending upon the observer's governing influence. In other words, what they've aligned with throughout the course of their life. So one gesture might mean several gestures to somebody else. It's all down to personal interpretation. But we say to you that always, upon any communication you engaged in, that you follow the feeling tone first. Always go with the feeling tone, because, as you've heard many times before, energy doesn't lie. True energy flows, and you'll know when something's out of alignment because you'll feel it. It does not resonate with you when something is an untruth. So this is very important for you to understand, particularly with the information that's being exchanged with you in your level of society. There'll be those in higher places within the societal order, and those that, shall we say, are in positions of power in your world that will be communicating to you at face value through the medium of words. And those that are paying attention, as we say, are feeling into their communications, will soon know that what they're saying doesn't match the truth of the situation. It's merely a ruse, a charade, in order to manipulate your conscious thinking so that they can have some sort of control or power over you and withhold withheld that power over you. So now is a time for you to take personal responsibility by being that beautiful vessel of light that you are, and that interpreter and transmuter of energy and vibration. You have the choice at any moment to feel into a conversation on an energetic level, but most of you do not. We are not judging you for this. It's simply the way that you've been brought up in your societal roles, and it's a case of you having to go through some inner workings, doing some inner work in order to clear these old belief systems that are no longer true. And you'll do this by feeling into the vibration behind the subconscious belief system. Once you do that, a lot of you will be somewhat amazed with what you'll discover, as a lot of what you perceive to be true is in fact not at all. It's a charade, it's a ruse. It's a manipulation of power that's been used, a spell if you like, that's been cast upon you to keep you small and indoctrinated by these misalignments. So with this in mind, we hope it has given you some scope in order to think differently and feel differently when you're communicating with others. We thank you so much for listening and taking on board these energies behind this communication, as most of you will feel the vibration of truth behind them.
Fascinating communication there from the world of spirit. I found that very on point as they were talking about communication, verbal and non-verbal. And a lot of us focus on the verbal aspect of communication, but it was nice to hear from spirit them talking about the other side of it, the energetic exchange, that words contain a frequency and energy. And not everything is in alignment with what the intention is behind the communication. So listening to our gut instincts and trusting what we're feeling, the energy that we're feeling in the heart space, the heart center, as we're engaging in these conversations and communications with people. It's very subtle, so do pay attention with that. Trust your instincts. We all get that feeling sometimes when we're hearing some information and it's like, no, that doesn't feel right. We feel that icky feeling, that tense feeling, don't we? So it was nice to have that confirmation from spirit with this. And also their heads up in relation to people in power, maybe political leaders or parties or people that we look up to and trust, supposedly. When we're hearing their communications, again, feel into it. Is it true? Is it in alignment? We'll get the feeling if it's off. We'll just know it. We'll feel it in our bones. So I really enjoyed that communication from spirit. It's very much needed at this moment in time. I'm sure you will all agree. So now we're going to move into the next segment of the show, which is a sneaky peek into this week's forecast reading. Hello, my name is Glenn Boddice and I'm a spiritual medium, and welcome to this week's energy forecast reading for Monday the 13th of October 2025. Now those of you that watched me work before will know that I connect with my spirit guides and helpers and also consult the Angel Wisdom Tarot card. So what I'm about to do is just shuffle the pack and allow a card to come out for this week's forecast reading. So here is your card for this week's forecast reading. I'm now going to link into the energy of that. First of all, my guides are telling me to tell you, don't be a stranger this week. Put yourself forward, engage in conversations, because you'll never know where it will lead. There's a lot of opportunities coming your way this week. There may not be the big all singing, all dancing opportunities that you imagine, but albeit said, there will be incremental steps to put you on the right path. So start and say yes more than what you have been doing in the previous 2 weeks. I've got to say that you also need to take some time out of your busy schedule to reflect upon you and how you feel and your energy levels and your emotions. You're giving far too much, and it's now time to rein it in a little bit, so that you can have that time for reflection, to heal and get your energies back on track, because my guides are saying that there's going to be a substantial change in your life coming up relatively soon, where things are going to move on a faster scale. This is the end of the free version of the weekly forecast reading. If you would like to see the entirety of this week's forecast reading, then you can do that by subscribing. And as a subscriber, what you will receive is the full version of the weekly forecast reading. You will also receive the audio for the weekly radio show, and also you'll receive 10% off all of my spiritual services there. So this includes all of the readings there for you to benefit from. And also you will receive new updates and information and news of what's happening with myself and the services that I provide, and also the events that I take part in. You'll hear all about that ahead of everybody else. And this is because you're a subscriber to Glenn Boddice Spiritual Medium. So you can find a link either above or below this video, where by clicking on the link, you can then become a subscriber to reap all of the benefits that I've described to you. So I look forward to having you on this journey with me as a Glenn Boddice Spiritual Medium subscriber. Thank you for taking time to watch this video and supporting the work that Spirit and myself work together in doing so. It sounds like we're in for a very interesting week, albeit you've just heard a snippet of it. But if you're wanting to hear the full version, like the advertisement says, you can go and be a subscriber, and you can just go over to my website and click the button there to subscribe to hear the full version. Anyway, thank you for tuning in this week. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. I hope, if anything, you can take something of value from it and take it into your own daily lives there. And can I extend the invitation, if anybody is listening that has any paranormal stories, or would like me to answer any questions in relation to paranormal, self-help, spiritual development, then please get in contact with me by either heading over to my website, www.glennboddicespiritualmedium.com, or you can email me at glennboddice@live.co.uk. It will be fascinating to hear from you and hopefully help you through the line of questioning that you have under those topics that I've just mentioned there. So I certainly hope that with what's been discussed in this week's show, like I say, that it is wet your whistle, so to speak, in relation to all things paranormal and supernatural. It is a fascinating subject, and it's one that I'm engrossed in, and it's one that I'm continually learning from. Even though I've been doing this for probably over 25 years now, there's always something new to discover, new techniques, new ways of working with spirit, new way of detecting them, and also working alongside some amazing, fascinating enthusiasts as well and professionals is just a game changer. So I really enjoy this subject matter. So with what we've been talking about today, I do hope that it's giving you that enthusiasm, that inquiring mind to explore this subject a little bit further. And I would say that that is a very healthy approach, rather than just, as I said earlier, it's a ghost, it's a spirit. No, debunk it first. You know, you may come across as a bit of a negative Nancy, but, you know, you'd rather be coming across accurate with the evidence, with the information, than, you know, just telling folklore and folk tales. I would certainly encourage you all to use the logical mind first, and then tap into your, you know, your spiritual sensitivity, connect with your guides in order to attain what is really happening. So I hope you have a blessed week, everybody, whatever it is you're up to. Please join me again next Monday, 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, on all of my social media accounts and my website with this very show, From Beyond with Glenn Boddice, talking about all things spiritual, paranormal and self-help. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to From Beyond. For more information about what products and services Glenn provides, go to Glenn Boddice Spiritual Medium